Welcome the audience to the June 19th, 2018 Planning and Zoning Board meeting. Would you all please stand while Coach Williams says the pledge and the invocation.
Our gracious Father in heaven, again we come thanking you for allowing us to see another blessed day. We ask that you let the Holy Spirit be present in this meeting tonight. And we thank you for this board, and we thank you for the staff. We pray for those who come, Lord, seeking decisions from this board and from this staff. We ask to let the Holy Spirit guide and lead us that we might do that which is pleasing in our sight. This we offer this night is our prayer in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Christie, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Art Little is out of town. Vice Chair Randy Armentor.
Here.
Mr. Jake Porsche.
Here.
Ms. Latricia Cobb.
Here.
Ms. Julia Dickerson. Here. Ms. Sharon Galicia. Here. Ms. Janelle Hyatt. Here. Mr. Kyle Link is absent tonight. Mr. Gary Navarre.
Here.
Mr. Kirk Smith.
Here.
And Mr. LaSalle Williams.
Yeah.
This is an 11-member board. It will take the majority of those members present to grant or deny any request heard tonight. The chair will refrain from voting unless that vote might affect the outcome. The meeting will be conducted with me reading the request from the agenda. The planning staff will give a presentation and report their recommendations. If the applicant would like to add to the staff's presentation, or if someone from the audience has comments, please come to the microphone and state your name, address, and the nature of your request. All persons wishing to speak other than the applicants need to fill out a blue request to appear form located in the back of this room. The form must be given to the staff member prior to the reading of the agenda item. As required by this board bylaws, in all cases, the proponents will be limited to 10 minutes. Opponents will be granted 10 minutes as well, with each speaker allowed no more than 3 minutes. I recommend that a spokesman be selected if there is a large group wanting to speak on the same agenda item. If 4 or more speakers' request forms are submitted, the time allowed for individual speakers will be limited based on the number of forms submitted. The chair has the right to limit speakers who present redundant information or personal attacks. The unique situations, the chair may extend or the board may vote to extend the time allotted for speakers. After discussion, the board will vote on each request. I will announce the decision of the board after the vote. The variances, exceptions, and preliminary subdivision requests are final tonight. The rezoning cases will go before the police jury for final action on June 21st, 2018 at 5:30 p.m. This meeting will be filmed by the Calcasieu Parish Government Channel and can be viewed on Wednesday and Thursday following the meeting. For additional run dates, check the website at www.cppj.net. Channel 5 in Lake Charles, Sulphur, Moss Bluff, Westlake, Benton, DeQuincy, and Gillis. Channel 99 in Corliss and Grand Lake. Please either turn off or silence all electronic devices. Number 5, take appropriate action on sub 05180102, a request by Redmark Construction LLC for preliminary subdivision approval to allow a residential subdivision, 3 lots in Redmark Estates Phase 2 in the 2600 block of Highway 90 West in Ward 4. I will entertain a motion for approval with a condition.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Cobb. I'll need a second.
Second.
By Ms. Galicia. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located west of Sulphur and encompasses 300 acres of agricultural zone land. Earlier this month, the applicant received approval of a 10-lot minor subdivision on the parent tract of land. The development being discussed tonight would add 3 lots for a total of 13 in the overall development. The smallest of the 3 lots will be 25 acres in size. We have not received any written opposition to this request, and because the development meets the requirements for agricultural zoning, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the condition that the development is subject to an application for and/or compliance with an LPDES stormwater discharge permit, which may be required through the Department of Environmental Quality and the Calcasieu Parish Division of Planning and Development.
Okay, does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's presentation? None? Okay, seeing no blue cards, do we have any questions or comments from the board? We'll call for a vote. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item number 5 carries. Number 6, take appropriate action on variance 04180041, a request by Denise Matthews to allow 4 dwellings with less than required public road frontage. Required 400 feet, requesting 200 feet, and less than required lot square footage. Required 87,120 square feet, requesting 43,600 square feet at 1654 West Burton Street in Ward 4. I'll entertain a motion for approval with the conditions.
So moved.
Motion
Second.
by Mr. Navarre, second by Coach Williams. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located west of Sulphur and encompasses 1 acre of agricultural zone land. The property is divided into 2 lots. If the variances are approved, the applicant plans to place 2 manufactured homes on each lot for a total of 4 manufactured homes. Each of the homes will be new single wides with 3 bedrooms and 2 baths, and all will be used for rental purposes. We have not received any written opposition to this request, and because the development is not consistent with the character of the area, the staff recommends that the request be denied. Should the board grant the request, the staff recommends the following conditions: that the development adheres to the site plan on file with the division, provided that the director may authorize adjustments to plans in light of technical or engineering considerations, and that the manufactured homes be skirted prior to the utilities being connected.
Does the applicant have anything to add? If so, step up to the mic. State your name and address.
Denise Matthews, 1633 West Burton. I own the duplexes across the street, and I do plan on putting all brand-new manufactured homes with skirting.
Okay, does the board have any questions or comments? Yes.
Question for the staff. Is it mostly the density that is the problem?
That was our main
Okay.
concern, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
The fact that there would be 4 on 1 acre,
Sure.
yes.
Question for the applicant. The main problem in the recommendation to be denied is the density. Could you, so it would be more in keeping with the area, what would still work for you as far as if reducing the amount of trailers?
Just whatever's required. I mean, they do have mobile homes, on the side of it and in back of it.
Sure.
And they do have a mobile home park, just a couple of driveways down across the street.
Okay, so 2 would be approved as of right?
Correct. 1 on each lot would be approved.
2. Okay, I'm done. Mr.
If it was a mobile home park, qualified as a park, how many trailers could they put on an acre?
You'd have to have 5,000 square feet per, and an acre is over 40,000 square feet. So
So it
whatever
still
that-
wouldn't qualify?
Well, they're not asking for it to be a
Yeah.
manufactured home park. They're asking.
I understand that, but if it was a mobile home park, how many could you put on an acre?
What's that, Matt?
That's a
8.
weird.
They're telling me 8.
So she's asking half of what a mobile home park would want.
Right, and I believe that the staff would recommend against a manufactured home park as well.
Hmm.
Okay. Any other questions by the board? If not, we'll ask for a roll call vote.
Mr. Navarre,
Yes.
Ms. Cobb,
No.
Mr. Forshey,
No.
Mr. Williams,
No.
Mr. Smith,
No.
Ms. Galicia,
Yes.
Ms. Dickerson,
No.
Ms. Hyatt,
No.
6 against and 2 for.
Six against, 2 for. Motion fails. Item number 7. Take appropriate action on VAR-0518-0042, a request by a succession of John Gamage, hopefully I got it right, for a variance to allow an additional dwelling on one lot at 1105 Robbie Lane in Ward 3. I'll entertain a motion for approval with conditions.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Dickerson, second by Ms. Hyde. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located southeast of Lake Charles and encompasses 1 acre of mixed residential zone land. Currently on the property is a manufactured home that served as Mr. Gamage's residence prior to his recent passing. Mr. Gamage's sister plans to use that home for her in-laws and would like to move her own manufactured home on the land to serve as her residence, and this necessitates the variance. We have not received any written opposition to this request, but because the proposed density is not consistent with the area, the staff recommends the request be denied. Should the board grant the request, the staff recommends the following conditions: that the development adhere to the site plan on file, provided that the director may authorize adjustments, and that the manufactured home be skirted prior to utilities being connected.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's presentation? Step up to the mic, state your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Polanco, and my address is 2187 East Goche Road, Lot 522, Lake Charles, Louisiana, 70607. My brother recently passed away in February. His mobile home is paid for. My fiance and I help care for his 2 parents, which are both elderly and on Social Security, and we would like to be able to use my brother's home, which is completely paid for them to live in it, so we could help provide for them and keep my home, because my mobile home is only 7 years old, and I have skirting and everything that I need for it. It's basically a brand new mobile home, and I would like to be able to use my brother's land and be able to keep his trailer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have 1 blue card, Mark Hickenbottom. But, no, you can
Oh,
sit
okay,
down.
good,
Yes,
okay.
we'll call you back up if we need. Thank you, I'm sorry.
Okay.
My name is Mark Higginbotham. I live at 7102 Vincent Reed Road, which is the main road that leads to the subdivision in question here. And I'm asking the board to deny this request. This neighborhood is zoned as a single-family residence. I'm afraid if this is allowed, it's only setting a precedence to allow multiple family housing, and there's also 4 acres behind this residence, which has no access. It's property, it's locked in, there's no access. So I'm thinking this could provide access to that property, and then somebody would go in here and develop multiple family housing. On the west side of Vincent Reed Road, most of these homes have multiple acres for their residence. And if anyone's ever drove back in this neighborhood, you'd think you were in a third world country. I mean, it's pretty much standard to have your living room couch in the front yard. There's no restrictions on these homes. They're substandard housing. And the only thing we have to protect our values, our property values, is the code enforcement. So when these mobile homes get run down, it's very hard to get anything done about them. And it just runs our property values down. Just asking your consideration to deny this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments by the board? Would the applicant like to come back up for any
Yes, sir.
rebuttal statements?
Yes, sir. I would just like to add the 4 acres that are available behind my brother's property has no access road, and it was for sale for some time. They were asking $140,000 for 4 acres. Were not able to sell it because of the fact that it has no access road. My brother's property does butt up right to that property, so in the event that even if I am not able to bring my trailer there, I will not allow that to be used as an access area. There are several mobile homes in the neighborhood that are way older and worse shape than the mobile home that's currently there. My mobile home is only 7 years old. I have a family of 2 children. This will all be family. It's not gonna be used as a rental income. It's not gonna be used in any other way except to take care of my brother's property since he's deceased.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I got a question, maybe the staff can. As long as I've been on this board, I've never heard of a property being locked in where you couldn't have access. How do we deal with that? You got property and you can't get to it. What is the legal means of?
Well, Mr. Williams, whenever you have landlocked property, there are certain rules that will apply. It depends on ownership of the neighboring properties, the nearest street address, nearest public road. There are a lot of issues that go into that, a lot of factors that go into play there.
Oh, thank you.
On this one, I couldn't tell you as far as who owns what and where the access would be required to be given.
Thank you. You may be seated. Yes, sir.
Ms. Matthews? Ms. Matthews?
I think.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, they'd like for you to come back up.
Yes, ma'am.
You said this would be for a family member
Right.
that would be living in the trailer?
Ma'am.
What relationship is the family?
My fiance's mother and father, we plan to be married this summer. We've been together for 7 years.
If they put a stipulation that she could be the only one living in the property, and if something happened, then you could, the trailer would have to be moved with that.
That'd be fine. It's his mother and his father, so if something happened in that event and they weren't living anymore, then I would sell the mobile home and have it taken away. I'm just
How
trying to help take care of my family the best that I can. I'm a single parent with 2 kids. We're waiting to get married this summer. My brother recently passed unexpectedly. We found him passed away in his home. His home is completely paid for. The land is paid for, and I would like to keep it and have my family there all together.
Thank you. Ms. Galicia?
Oh, I just thought the staff was gonna say something. Like
Oh,
that's
yeah.
not enforceable.
Wes?
Yeah.
Well, what I was gonna say, I know this can be an emotional thing, but it's, and I know you're trying to help, you do a stipulation where if the family moves out, it's just it's hard for the staff to enforce that, and know when that happens. I know there's been those kind of stipulations in the past, it's just been very difficult for us to prove when somebody like that moves out or to keep track of that. And so I just wanted to make that comment too.
Any other questions for the applicant? You may be seated. Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Okay, we'll ask for a roll call vote.
Mr. Smith,
No.
Mr. Navarre,
No.
Ms. Galicia,
Yes.
Ms. Cobb,
Yes.
Mr. Porsche,
No.
Ms. Dickerson,
No.
Mr. Williams,
No.
Ms. Hyatt.
Yes.
3 for and 5 against.
Motion fails. Item number 8. Take appropriate action on VAR-0518-0043. A request by Jeremy Donovan for a variance to allow an accessory building to exceed the maximum square footage allowed is 2,000 square foot, requesting 3,175 square foot at 6922 Chenier Drive in Ward 3. I will entertain a motion for approval with conditions.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Cobb, second by Ms. Coach Williams. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located in South Lake Charles and encompasses 1.84 acres of single-family residential zone property. Currently on the property is the applicant's home and 4 accessory buildings. 2 of the 4 buildings will be demolished and replaced with the proposed 40 by 40 foot building. The new building will be used for personal storage. We have not received written opposition on this request. However, opposition to the previous administrative review request resulted in this public hearing. Because minimal impacts are to be expected, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the following conditions: that the development adhere to the site plan on file, provided that the director may authorize adjustments, and that the facade must be built of comparable materials to the residence.
Thank you. Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's presentation? Please step up to the podium, state your name and address. Oh, you don't have anything? Seeing no blue cards in opposition, any questions or comments by the board? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 9, take appropriate action on EX-0418-0023, a request by Abraham Abstract Company LLC for an exception to allow a borrow pit, 97 acres, in the 8,000 block of Ward Line Road in Ward 3. I'll entertain a motion for approval with conditions.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Dickerson, second by Mr. Navarre. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located southeast of Lake Charles and encompasses approximately 120 acres of agricultural zone land. If approved, the applicant plans to have the pit excavated in 3 phases. Upon completion, the pit will be used as a personal use pond. We have not received any written opposition to this request. Because minimal impacts are to be expected, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the following conditions: that the development must be in accordance with section 26122-1F4 of the parish code, that a road damage bond in the amount of $1.25 million for the use of Ward Line Road must be submitted to the Division of Engineering prior to issuance of a development permit, that utilization of additional parish roads is subject to future bonding requirements in the event parish roads are impacted by heavy truck traffic, and that the development meets the conditions of the letter of no objection from Gravity Drainage District Number 4 of Ward 3 dated April 24th, 2018.
All right. Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's presentation? Please step forward, state your name and address.
I'm Pete Pauley, 1531 Hodges Street. I just want to address the bond. And I'd like to pass something out, please. I didn't know how the bond was, here's the next one. I didn't know how the bond was applied or how it was derived. So I spoke to Mr. Connor, and he advised me it's $400,000 per mile, which is the overlay cost to the police jury. I have just a couple of points. Number one, without thinking, and I know Ms. Tunn over here does a magnificent job over there planning. I had to say that. I've known her all her life. But the route was taken as a route direct to Highway 27, which is a little over 3 miles, and that's the reasoning behind the size of that bond. That bond's 1% a year. It's $12,500 a year just for the privilege of doing this. Now, we are actually, if you go north, this drawing, the first picture that you see here is an excerpt from the current state map. And we are, if you go north 1/2 mile to Lincoln Road and turn west 1 mile, you're at at State Highway 397. That's 1.5 miles, not 3 1/4 miles. That would reduce the bond based on $400,000 per mile to $600,000. And we can make sure that the contractor contracts with the pit to take that route. And that will allow them to get down to Helms Road and 27, or points north, points south, whatever they want to go, but keep them within that 1.5 mile length. But there's another question I'd like to ask. First of all, there was a pit operating 1/4 mile south of us. And I just wanted to know what they paid for a bond. Well, it turns out I didn't know this, but they were operating without a permit. What if 2 or 3 pits open up on the same stretch of road? Does everybody have to pay the bond for the full price of the road? And I also want and I'm saying this mostly because I'd like for this body to think about this and consider it. I really believe that the most fair way to look at this is half that cost. The trucks are never loaded until they leave the pit. They're not loaded when they come in. So the weight, the real heavy part of the weight, other than that, everybody runs on that road, 18-wheelers. I mean, the only reason why 397 isn't in front of this house is because some great old friends, the great-grandfather, Mr. Gale, who lives on 397 to the west right there, they had a lot of stroke back then because they owned all the land. And that state highway was moved over 1 mile to get him hard service in front of his house. And so that's a pretty good move on their part. But the facts are, it's a direct route from the interstate all the way down to, quite frankly, all the way down to Boone's Corner Road. And that highway right there, it's actually a highway, but that road right there is heavily, heavily traveled.
Sir, I'd like for you to go ahead and start wrapping it up.
I'll be happy to. I'm
Thank you.
requesting that we reduce the bond to $200,000 a mile for 1.5 miles, or at minimum, the $400,000 a mile for 1.5 miles. That's all we are to a state highway, and I believe that's all the rule is. So I'd appreciate you thinking of that, please.
Thank you. Mr. Crane?
Yes, sir.
You know, I'm appalled, or I'm concerned about the question that he has, and I think this is for a forum with staff and not with this board right now to bring back another presentation, because we're not
Right.
at this time ready to start negotiating.
Right. Well, and I,
It was
that's,
for your consideration, sir.
Sir?
It was for your consideration.
Yes, but that's not what's on the board.
No, we wanted just to
Sir,
approve as is.
thank you,
Chairman.
thank you.
so my comment is that if you want to take that into consideration, it may be advisable to defer action on it, on the case, so that, you know, this can be brought up before our engineering department for them to look at and to consider. But obviously, when they reviewed this, we send the plans over. That was the number and what they gave us. So that's why it was part of the stipulation. So anyway, so if you are considering amending that, you might want to consider
Well,
that.
I don't think this is the proper forum to amend that at this time, but I do think that, you know, if we would like to see a deferral on this, and the staff would like to talk about it. But other than that, you know, I think it's gonna be a vote on it now.
Let's run it through at whatever you have to
Sir,
right
Sir,
now.
I think we'll call you back up if we need you. Thank you.
So, I mean, it's really up to y'all, how y'all want to handle it, but, you know, if you vote on it now, the stipulation is the amount that you see on the.
In front of us.
That's correct.
Right.
And if there's a question about that, we really need to defer to our engineering, you know, staff, you know, to see if that's adequate.
Mr. Navarre?
I'd like to ask Mr. Pauly a question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Pauly, come to the mic. Would you rather us defer it so you can renegotiate the thing per mile, or do you want to go ahead, if we approve it
No,
tonight, it's going to be done?
no, we have to pay the bond. We don't have to pay the bond now. We have to pay the bond when we actually apply for the permit or get the permit.
Right.
But I want this considered by this body so that, I mean, this puts some undue pressure on some people, and I just consider it to be pretty much pressure. One property covering the cost of an entire road. But that's something that I would just like for you all and staff to consider. I know Mr. Crane's pretty good at this. He
The
can.
problem is we have no control over that.
No,
That has to be engineering. So my question to you is, do you want us to go ahead and vote on this tonight, and you're gonna be stuck with this $1.2 million bond?
Well, does
Or
that
you
stick-
wanna delay it?
Does that stick us with $1.2 million? If it does, I want to delay it and defer it until,
That's my question.
I would much rather defer it then.
Okay, I'll make a motion, we defer it for 30 days.
Motion by Mr. Navarre, second by Mr. Porsche. We need a roll call vote. Ms. Christie. On the deferral.
Ms. Dickerson?
Yes, to defer.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Porsche?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Felicia?
Yes.
Ms. Cobb?
Yes.
Mr. Navarre?
Yes.
And Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
8-4 to defer.
Deferral passes. There's no vote required on the actual motion. Okay, so we're gonna move to item number 10. Take appropriate action on EX-0518-0024, a request by Arnold Natale for an exception to allow industrial development solar farm in the 800 block of West Gautier Road in Ward 3. I'll entertain a motion for approval with conditions.
So moved.
Mr. Navarre made the motion.
Second.
Second by Ms. Dickerson. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located south of Lake Charles and encompasses nearly 40 acres of agricultural zone land. If this request is approved, the applicant will lease the land to a power producer who will sell the power to Entergy. The solar panels will be installed 6 to 8 feet above the ground on I-beams. The panels will rotate throughout the day to follow the sunlight, and these panels will be located approximately 1,500 feet north of Gautier Road. We have not received any written opposition to this request, and because minimal impacts are to be expected, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the following stipulations: that the development adhere to the site plan on file with the division, provided the director may authorize adjustments, that all exterior lighting must be oriented inward toward the development to minimize intrusion onto surrounding properties, that a 6-foot wooden privacy fence be installed as shown on the site plan and in accordance with section 2650 of the parish code prior to final electrical approval, that a runoff management plan will be required unless appropriate waiver is granted by the Division of Engineering, and that permitting is subject to approval of the Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's presentation? Seeing no blue cards, do we have any questions or comments by the board? Yes, sir, Mr. Navarre.
I see no picture in here of that thing. That's one of them great big big windmills they're talking about?
Solar panel.
Solar panel.
Oh, okay, excuse me. When you get old, you get senile. And I'm not old yet. Solar, okay.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay? Ayes carry, motion passes. Moving on to item number 11. Take appropriate action on EX-0518-0025. A request by Excalibur Land Company, LLC, for an exception to allow an industrial development, solar farm, in the 400 block of Dick A. Bear Road in Ward 8. I'll entertain a motion for approval with conditions.
Second.
Motion by Coach Williams, second by Mr. Navarre. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located west of Iowa and encompasses over 31 acres of agricultural zone land. If the request is approved, the development is going to be similar to what I mentioned before in Mr. Natale's request. The panels here in this particular location will be over 400 feet south of Highway 90. We have not received any written opposition to the request, and because minimal impacts are to be expected, the staff recommends the request be granted with the following stipulations: that the development adhere to the site plan, provided the director may authorize adjustments, that exterior lighting must be oriented inward, that a 6-foot wooden privacy fence be installed as shown on the site plan and in accordance with section 2650 of the parish code prior to final electrical approval, and that a runoff management plan will be required unless appropriate waiver is granted by the Division of Engineering.
Thank you. Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's presentation? Okay, no blue cards in opposition. Do we have any questions or comments by the board? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay? Motion carries. Item number 12. Take appropriate action on EX-0518-0026, a request by Eslam Edgerly for an exception to allow industrial development, solar farm, in the 2400 block of Edgerly to Quincy Road in Ward 7. I will entertain a motion for approval with conditions.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Cobb, second by Mr. Navarre. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located in the Edgerly area and encompasses nearly 13 acres of heavy industrial and agricultural zone land. The description of the project is as it was in Mr. Natale's request. The panels will be located more than a half-mile east of Edgerly to Quincy Road in this case. We have not received any written opposition to this request. Because minimal impacts are to be expected, the staff recommends the request be granted with the following conditions: that the development adhere to the site plan on file, provided the director may authorize adjustments, that all exterior lighting must be oriented inward, that a 6-foot wooden privacy fence be installed as shown on the site plan and in accordance with section 2650 of the parish code prior to final electrical approval, and that a runoff management plan will be required unless appropriate waiver is granted by Division of Engineering.
Thank you. Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's presentation? Seeing nothing, no blue cards in opposition, do we have any questions or comments by the board? Seeing none, we'll call for vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 13, take appropriate action on RZ-0418-0064. A request by TSWS Environmental Properties to rezone from agricultural A1 to light industrial I1 to allow industrial development storage yard at 823 Harvest Drive in Ward 4. I'll entertain a motion for approval with conditions. Motion by Ms. Dickerson, second by Ms. Hyde. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located south of Sulphur and encompasses just over 2 acres of land. If approved, the business on the abutting lot will expand storage to this site. Currently, on the property is a vacant house, 2 accessory buildings, a pond, and a manufactured home being used by an employee of the neighboring business. We have not received any written opposition to this request, and because the development is consistent with the general area, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the following conditions: that the development adhere to the site plan on file, provided that the director may authorize adjustments, that all exterior lighting must be oriented inward, that screening must be provided in accordance with Section 2650 of the Parish Code prior to development permit issuance, and that a runoff management plan will be required unless appropriate waiver is granted by the Division of Engineering.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's presentation? Nothing at this time. With no blue cards. Any questions or comments by the board? Call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 14. Take appropriate action on RZ-0418-0065. A request by Glenn Fusilier to rezone from agricultural A1 to recreational vehicle park to allow a recreational vehicle park, 32 spaces at 2120 Pujo Road in Ward 3. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Cobb, second by Ms. Galicia. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located in the Lebu settlement area and encompasses nearly 4 acres. If approved, the applicant plans to construct the 32-space RV park. The park will include a building to house laundry facilities and an office. We have not received any written opposition to this request. Because the proposed use is consistent with the area, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the following conditions: that the development adhere to the site plan on file, provided that the director may authorize adjustments, that all exterior lighting must be oriented inward toward the development, that RV park model types are prohibited, that screening must be provided in accordance with Section 2650 of the Parish Code prior to any final electrical approval, that a runoff management plan will be required unless appropriate waiver is granted by engineering, and that permitting is subject to approval of the Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's presentation? Seeing no blue cards, will any questions or comments from the board? Call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 15, take appropriate action on RZ-0518-0066. A request by Robert Miller to amend ordinance number 6669, that the development adhere to the site plan, 2 manufactured home spaces, to allow a revised site plan, 5 manufactured home spaces total at 623 and 629 I-10 Mobile Village Road in Ward 8. Entertain a motion.
So
Moved by Ms. Cobb, second by Ms. Galicia. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located in the Blue Settlement area and encompasses 1.5 acres. In 2016, the board and the police jury rezoned this tract of land to allow a 2-space manufactured home park. The applicant has since acquired the neighboring property, also zoned for a manufactured home park. He would now like to add 3 additional spaces for mobile homes. We have not received any written opposition to this request, and because minimal impacts are to be expected, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the condition that the development adhere to the revised site plan, provided that the director may authorize adjustments.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Does the applicant have anything to add to staff's presentation? Any blue cards? Seeing no blue cards in opposition. Any questions or comments by the board? Seeing none. Call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes with stipulations. Okay, let's see. I'd like to remind the audience that you must turn in a blue request to appear form prior to the reading of the agenda item. Moving on to item number 16, we will take appropriate action on RZ-0518-0067, a request by E-Tronics Workshop to rezone from single-family residential to mixed residential to allow residential development in the 400 block of Park Road in Ward 1. I'll entertain a motion for approval with conditions.
So move.
Motion by Ms. Heights, second by Ms. Cobb. Ms. Wallace.
Dickerson.
It was Ms. Dickerson, just to clarify for the record. This property is located in Moss Bluff and encompasses a half acre of land. In 2017, the applicant came before you to request the land be rezoned to commercial to allow an appliance repair business, and that request was denied. The proposed duplex that he would like to build now would be 40 feet by 50 feet with approximately 1,000 square feet per unit. We have not received any written opposition to this request. And because the proposed zoning is consistent with the zoning of the area, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the following conditions: that the development adhere to the site plan on file, provided that the director may authorize adjustments, that all exterior lighting must be oriented inward, that screening must be provided in accordance with section 2650 of the parish code prior to final electrical approval, and that a runoff management plan will be required unless appropriate waiver is granted by engineering.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's presentation? No. Okay.
What number is this?
RZ-0518-0069. I don't know the number.
18 was.
Okay, so we have, what's his name, Sid? We have two blue cards. One is Sid Horn. Please step up to the mic.
I don't know that I need to. I am not understanding.
Is this 16?
I refer to another number, not 67, which you're considering right now. Thank you, sir. I just put it up there so that I turn this when that becomes available again.
Look, he might. This is.
There's no opposition. He's a representative. Represent the owner. I don't speak.
Okay, we have, you're not wishing to speak at this time? We have one, request to appear by Jacqueline Granger.
Jacqueline Granger, 901 Lanyap Lane.
Okay.
I would like to point out that this is actually half a lot. It's already been divided into two. So they're wanting to put a duplex on this half a lot. Our neighborhood has restrictions to one domicile per lot. That sounds real petty because there are apartments across the street. My main objection is, if you see right north of it, all those empty acres, that's the Bellards. If somebody buys that, and this lot has been zoned multi, that would be prime for somebody to want to put a bunch of apartments there. That would get their most amount of dollars out of there. Yeah, they would put the many apartments. They would screw up my drainage, which is already terrible. It's the slippery slope rule. If you zone this the properties north of it, you would have a very hard time saying no to somebody wanting that to be changed to multi-residential. And I understand he wants to get the most value out of his land. I don't see why he should be able to do that at the expense of my property. 4 of my neighbors and I all drain that way.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
Is that, for the staff, is that part of that Lanyard Plain subdivision? Or is that, it doesn't look like it, looks like it's on
It is a
property.
part of the subdivision, yes.
So what makes
So
it?
they would have to, if that lot is under those restrictions, they would have to abide by those restrictions still.
So who enforces that?
That would be the homeowners.
So they'd have to take them to court?
Yes.
That sounds fun.
Be a civil matter. It would be a civil matter. And just so you know, the property to the north, the large tract of land, it's zoned mixed residential currently, which allows for 1 duplex per lot. And so it's a large lot. Obviously, they would be able to subdivide that if they met the subdivision ordinance. They could come in and apply for that. But as it currently stands, they would only be allowed 1.
Portia.
I just wanted ma'am, did you hear the lady in opposition, what Mr. Crane just said, that we're not rezoning up for rezoning to multifamily? This is from R1 to R2, which the property north there is already zoned R2. Just wanted her to be able, make sure she understood. We're not setting a precedent for multifamily housing by zoning to R2.
So the Bellards is residential 2?
It's mixed residential, R2 mixed residential, which allows for 1 duplex per lot. They have a large lot. Now, like I said, they could subdivide the property.
Right, and later?
And then they could put a duplex per lot if they were subdivide the property in accordance with the subdivision regulation.
But they could already do that as of right.
They could.
By
I
R2.
mean, they would have to make application
Sure.
and do that.
Oh, that's it. I just wanted to.
Thank you. Any other questions by the board? Would the applicant like to come back up to the podium and speak? Okay. State your name and address, please.
My name is Sid Horn. I'm an attorney in Lake Charles, but I'm retired. I live at 4438 Capstone Crossing in Lake Charles, out at the Lakes Morgan Field subdivision. I represent Mr. Gilmore. He goes to my church. I have some pictures here I'd like to hand out to all of y'all. I think the lady that just spoke misunderstood. Mr. Gilmore only wants to put 1 building or 1 duplex on this whole property. For him to do more, he would have to come back to y'all and ask for approval. Across the street, 82 feet from where his property, are already many duplexes. And he's just requesting to do something with his and put 1 duplex on it. And that's really all I've got to say.
Thank you. Any other comments by the board? Questions?
I just had a question, Mr. Horn. Where are the driveways gonna face? Park Road?
Yes, on the site plan, the driveway will be on the front.
No other questions by the board? Have something? Okay, we'll call for roll call vote. Ms. Christie?
Mr. Navarre?
Yes.
Ms. Galicia?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yeah.
Ms. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Porsche?
Yes.
Ms. Hyatt?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
And Ms. Cobb?
Yes.
8-4.
Motion carries. Item number 17. Take appropriate action on RZ -0518-0068. A request by H.C. Drew Estate, Hulbert Farm, and William B. Lawton Family Limited Partnership to rezone from agricultural A1 general commercial C2 and unzoned to central business commercial C3 and light industrial I1 to allow commercial and light industrial development, light industrial megasite on Highway 90 West, Fabaka Road, Interstate 10 West, Highway 108 West, and Gum Island Road in Ward 7. I'll entertain a motion for approval with conditions.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. DeVore.
Second.
Second by Ms. Cobb. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located immediately east of the town of Benton and encompasses approximately 12,000 acres of land. We have received a number of letters in opposition to this request, as well as a number of letters just stating concerns. The applicant's representative will provide you with details in his presentation, so I will just read the staff recommendation into the record. Because zoning assurance is necessary for the landowners to pursue site certification through the Louisiana Economic Development Department, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the following conditions: that unless modifications are required due to technical or engineering considerations and approved by the director, all uses and improvements must be pursuant to and in strict accordance with all applicable federal, state, and local laws, statutes, ordinances, codes, resolutions, rules, and regulations. That all exterior lighting must be oriented inward toward the development or structures to minimize intrusion onto surrounding properties. That screening, where required, must be provided in accordance with Section 2650 of the Parish Code of Ordinances. That a runoff management plan and a traffic impact analysis will be required for all developments unless appropriate waivers are granted by the Division of Engineering. That uses subject to the Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development access management requirements must obtain state approval prior to issuance of a local permit. That no lounges be permitted. That at the discretion of the director, any developments will be subject to development agreements between the landowners, respective developers, and the police jury outlining the conditions of approval for this rezoning and any future rezoning, any mitigation measures identified by the runoff management plan and the traffic impact analysis, any standards or covenants to be imposed by the owners for developers, and any other pertinent information. That due to the uniqueness and long-term development of this property as a commercial and industrial megasite, the requirement for obtaining a development permit within 1 year in accordance with Section 26127 will be waived for the initial 5 years. Thereafter, upon receipt of documentation of LED site certification applications, submittal of anticipated conceptual plans and timelines for commercial or industrial development, applications to petition for federal or state regulatory permits or other similar types of regulatory applications and/or permits, the director is authorized to extend or waive the requirement of Section 26127 of the Parish Code of Ordinances. Reversion of the rezoning under Section 26127 shall be by Planning and Zoning Board and Police Jury only, and that the land be rezoned in accordance with the final zoning map illustrating where agricultural zoning will remain.
Thank you. Does the applicant have anything to add to staff's presentation?
Yes, sir.
And as he approaches, I do want to let you know that we did receive one more letter in opposition after we all came over here. So I did want to let y'all know that, and I can pass it around if y'all need it.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you very much for the time to appear here, and thank you also for the job that you do on behalf of citizens of this parish. I hope everybody recognizes how tough your role is, trying to weigh one property right against another, and I've seen you do that for many, many years, and I thank you for the effort that you put in. I'm just going to spend a few moments with you just to highlight some of our intentions, some of our thoughts, and then open up for any questions that you may have. A couple of the maps that are in your packet, I think were actually shown on the video a moment ago. We didn't know that they were going to have those in there. and I'll address some of the other pictures that are in there in just a second. All right. Yes, I'm Mark McMurray. My office address is 1015 1015 Lakeshore Drive, Suite 522, right across the street. When we started looking at the prospects of asking for this rezoning for this mega site, one of the things that was pretty obvious to us was that there was going to have to be some level of kind of thinking outside the box, and I want to congratulate and thank the staff for attempting to do that. I think when the zoning ordinance was approved many moons ago, the thought of a mega site was really not in anybody's idea, and so the ordinance doesn't really address a mega site. We know that it's your norm that you, when asked to rezone property, that you want to know what's going to go on the property, and that makes sense. It doesn't make sense for a mega site because that's not the way mega sites are formed, and if that were to be the way that you continued to conduct your property, we wouldn't have a mega site because that's just not the way that they're developed. Mega sites, as applied in the Gulf Coast and up on the East Coast, are large tracts of land, minimal 1,000 acres, and they go up to well over what we are asking for, so that communities can get together, work through their economic development departments at the state level to get some of that area certified so that they can compete for major projects. Things like automobile assembly plants, major corporate, for instance, Walmart, Amazon distribution centers. When those companies put out an RFP for those, they'll send that to their State Department of Economic Development. And those state departments will immediately look toward their inventory of land that can accommodate something like that has gone through a certification process that covers a lot of the things that those companies don't want to have to deal with up front. They want it already dealt with. Things like historical preservation issues, environmental issues, where's the nearest rail, where's the nearest, and what would it cost to get it to the site, where's the nearest electrical substation, where's the nearest natural gas pipeline. So that's what we would like to try to do upon rezoning of the property, is to go to the State Department of Economic Development and apply for portions of this site to get certified. One of the questions that's come up is, why does it need to be this big? We get that. We understand, to the extent that there are a few homeowners around this site that are concerned about the negative impact that a site like this could have on them. We've tried to take that in consideration. After a meeting we had in Vinton with in excess of 100 citizens, we heard what was being asked, and instead of having a 100-foot buffer around the site, what we've amended through the staff to be able to do is to expand that to a 300-foot, a football field length, not zoned I-1, so not as a buffer, but as a natural buffer that stays as agricultural zoning. We also took a couple of areas on the very north central portion of that. You see a little island up there that is in the request for I-1 zoning. We took a piece on the extreme southwestern portion of that off because there was an impact on a landowner that we seemed to think it wouldn't hurt our project and our intentions to be able to remove that. We also, down on the lower southwestern portion of it, where you see a long area there that is green, there was an area there that had access from one side of 108 to the other. And there was a concern about what that access would do. So we've removed that through an amendment to the staff. So we've tried to react to concerns that were in the area, particularly with the 300-foot area remaining agricultural. This site, if there was a entry for mega site in the dictionary, I think it would have a picture of this site. Because when you look at the mega sites across the Gulf Coast now, this is exactly what they have. They have interstate access very close. They have state highways around them. They have access to rail. They have access to a port, which we do in the lower left-hand corner. That's the Vinton Port. There's access to Southland Field right down 108. So the width and breadth of this site is constructed in such a way as there are many, many types of things, all of which would be in I-1, nothing in I-2 that could locate here. Now, having said all that, the fact of the matter is, if you look in your pamphlet, the last 3 pictures of megasites basically look about like this land looks today. And some of them have been megasites for quite a few years. It takes a while for these things to take off. First of all, it takes a while to get them certified. But beyond that, because megasites are put in place to try to attract the home runs, the automobile assembly plants, the major corporate distribution sites, not a small mechanics operation or whatever. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's not what the goal of most of the mega sites are. And so consequently, they very often stay just like the land is today until the opportunity comes along to compete favorably with other communities that are looking for the same kind of development. And so I don't think, if we're able to get this zoned and get some of it certified, I think that puts us in the game. I think that puts us in the league of being able to compete for some of these generational type projects that change in a generational way the job opportunities that come in a community. But we could be competing for quite some time. But with the old theory of every journey begins with a step, our first step is trying to go ahead and secure the zoning so that we then can compete for the certification of LED. I'm sure I'm close to running out of time. I'll be happy to kind of address. One thing I want to say about these landowners. These people, the majority of this land has been owned by these landowners for more than 100 years. They have a different opinion now about how to use their land. Not really interested in raising cattle anymore. And I think they want to do something that offers not only an opportunity for them to use their land in the best way that's possible, but also to offer the opportunity to the community for a generational project that has vision, that has opportunity for economic growth, that has opportunity for jobs. And I've been very fortunate to work with them and be a part of watching them work through this process. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Mr. Chairman, I got one question for Mark. Of course, you mentioned the fact that these landowners have had this property for over 100 years. And I think we're all aware that rice growing and all that cattle, it's not mixing with the economy today. And we're looking at how the things are changing for the generation, for the young people. So I would think this would be a great plus for the young people, the generations, and, you know, for job opportunities, and not only that, for developing our communities. Everything is changing now. And I agree with you, because I used to play golf, and I can't play no more, so I got to find something else. So I think that it's challenging all of us in that direction. A lot of times we don't want to make them changes, but we got to look ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. We have some blue cards in opposition. We're going to start with, you don't have to go too far. Pardon me for a chance fence. Please state your name and address when you come, please.
Good evening. My name's Chance Finetz. I'm a resident at 4075 Highway 90 West, Benton. My property is near the intersection of Highway 90 and Faubaca Road, directly adjacent and nearly surrounded by the property being requested for rezoning to light industrial. I grew up farming and ranching most of this property with my dad and grandfather and had a lifelong dream of raising my own family in this area, away from the city. I've worked diligently from a very young age to save money and buy some of this land. I now have a wonderful wife, a 3-year-old daughter, a 1-year-old son, and a baby on the way as we finalize our house plans to build our dream home next year. I'm not opposed to economic growth and development. I myself value and apply principled entrepreneurship in my own career. However, this rezoning request has a scope that is too vague and too broad, and if approved, would open the opportunity for nearly unlimited development venues that fit the light industrial and commercial classification. The community and public would lose all governance on what type of manufacturer facility they might establish on this 10 to 12,000 acres. This would be like signing a blank check with no way to cancel it. Once you guys approve it, there's no turning back. The rail facility location being advertised and requested for rezoning is directly near 2 residential areas, Ladue Road and Lisa Lane. It's on the north side of the map. It's kind of like an island. Nothing was done to address those issues of those residents. Only one small 20-acre tract was removed on a request of one landowner who owns 400 acres. But nothing was done for all the residents around that area. This area has many housing surrounded it. This would be detrimental to my family's quality of life, as well as many others in this area. Many of those families have reached out to me and asked me to express their opposition to this proposal on their behalf. Many are in the audience here tonight, and most of the folks here are here for this issue. I ask each zoning member to ask themselves, how would I feel if a mega project were being proposed only 300 feet away from my doorstep and my lifelong residence? Without any idea of the project's scope, the type of manufacturing facility that would be established and would surround my home. Ask yourselves that question. This project needs to be broken down into phases with a clear project scope and development plan, starting with an area around the I-10 corridor, away from these residential communities. The rail access area north of Highway 90 near Ladue Road must be removed from the proposal to protect the quality of life of those living in that area. This is the only reasonable and fair option for the concerned citizens. Please protect the quality of life for these people and vote no on this current proposal. Thank you.
Mr. Tommy Malone.
Mr. Chairman, as the next speaker comes up, we do need to remind the audience that there are to be no comments or reactions like that. We need to conduct the meeting as we conduct all meetings like this. Thank you.
Thank you.
We were to be reminded not to clap for something well said? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Exactly. That's what he said.
Okay.
Trying to move the meeting along. Mr. Malone, state
My
your
name is
and
Tommy
address.
Malone. I currently live at 5631 Ladue Road. I recently just bought more property at 5649 Ladue Road. I'm concerned here. I can't say more than Chance Finetz just said, but we bought this property. My daughter bought property next to me. My son has property in front of me. We want to raise cattle and my grandkids here on this property. I can understand if maybe this was 90, 100 acres, but we're talking 10, 12,000 acres. That all these numbers and things y'all read, I'm still not sure what any of them mean to what can happen eventually here. Whether it's a man camp, a mechanic shop, a car building facility, and like you said, sir, I believe if you was in my shoes or anybody else's in Edgerly's shoes, and this was in your front yard, you'd be where I am opposing it. That's what I want known. I am against it. I want this place for my grandkids, other residents of Vinton, Edgerly, Toomey, to have a place. We already have metal buildings from Lake Charles to Sulphur. Things going up like crazy. There's got to be a stopping point somewhere where we can still raise families and cattle and do what we want to do. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Malone. Hopefully I said it right. Next is Mr. Barry Badon. Name and address, please.
Barry Badon, 4437 Shoepick Road, Carlos. I come before you today as a resident of Carlos, Louisiana, not to speak for or against the proposed zoning change. In an effort to not deliver an emotional diatribe, I'll stick to the facts as I understand them. Fact number one, a group of landowners has joined together to initiate a plan to develop what has been described as a mega site between the unincorporated areas of Carlos, the town of Sulphur, and the town of Vinton. Fact number two, the rezoning request is to make a change from A1 agricultural to I1 light industrial. Fact number three, according to multiple reports, the developer does not have a specific tenant or a group of tenants engaged in talks to locate on the property. Fact number four, I1 light industrial inherently includes C1, C2, and C3 permitted uses. Given these basic facts, one could reasonably assume on the acreage covered under this zoning request, permitted uses within the megasite could literally be developed into its own city or annexed by an existing city, given the nearly 100 permitted uses for light industrial zoning districts. I have a list of all these permitted uses available if anyone's interested. There's nearly 100 of them. That's straight from your website, by the way. I say all this to offer the following. How can this board even be asked to commit to a change that could literally reshape the landscape west of the Calcasieu River forever without being provided with the details of what could potentially be built? You, as a zoning board, would not let me, as a resident and landowner, develop my personal property without supplying meticulous details of what I'm building. Why is it not the same for a developer that could literally build their own city or their own manufacturing complex, or what about a land-based casino? Could any of these be the ultimate use of this mega project? We don't know because the details are said to be unknown. I'm not asking you to vote against this zoning change. My contention is sufficient details have not been provided to make that decision. I'm asking you to defer such a decision until there is more clarity on the issue and the impacts to the residents and the stakeholders have been adequately considered. The people of Western Calcasieu Parish deserve no less.
Thank you.
Jim, I got one question, maybe the staff can help me. And I'm gonna use myself for an example. If I live in this area and I got 100 acres of property and I got cattle on it, I'm raising cattle. If this mega site passes, how would that affect me? I still raise my cattle.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I heard some comments that from the gentleman before that I think it's going to affect him from not being able to raise it.
Would you like to ask Mr.
Yeah.
Finance?
But if he already raising cattle, that wouldn't have any effect on
Do you think Mr. Finance might be able to answer that, Mr.
it.
Williams?
Yeah.
Mr. Finance, do you mind coming to the mic?
So you gave the question if you had 100 acres, but if you had less than that, obviously, you know, the surrounding manufacturing site might affect, you could still raise cattle on it, but if your residence was there, how would that affect your quality of life? The main concern around this is a rail access with potential rail spur unloading, loading facility around all these houses. I work at a chemical facility. We hook up rail cars day and night, okay? It sounds like thunder. It's a loud boom. These people in this area would not be able to sleep at night. They wouldn't be able to raise kids in their houses with all that distraction and rail facility activity going on. So it would definitely affect the residents of this area, whether they were raising cattle or not. So it's not just about raising cattle, it's about being able to live in your residence.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? I'd like to ask the applicant to come back up and speak if he so chooses. Restate your name and address, please.
Mark McMurray, 1011 Lakeshore Drive, Suite 522, Lake Charles. I guess one thing I'd want to say is that the idea that zoning this light industrial is the end of all and that no one ever has another bite at the apple is just not the case, according to my understanding. And I would ask, if I'm wrong, then Wes, if you would correct me. One of the conditions is, according to what Ms. Wallace read, is that every development on this site, after it's zoned, will have to have a development agreement negotiated with the parish, which is going to take in a whole litany of issues that would concern not only the parish, but adjacent property owners, with the parish being on their behalf in that negotiation. That's my understanding. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
One other motive that we had is, I don't know how widespread the knowledge of this is, but back in the 1960s, the police jury created industrial areas. This is before the parish had zoning. They created these industrial areas using a statute under state law that allowed parishes to do that. And they created several of them: the Rose Bluff District, which is where Citgo is located, the Lockport District, there's a Nelson Steam Industrial District, where the parish was saying in those days, these are areas where we want heavy industrial activity to take place. And part of what they were doing then, and this is way before zoning, part of what they were doing then was sending out a signal to everybody that, okay, there may not be anything there today, but this is where industrial development is going to be. One of the things we were trying to accomplish here with this tract of land was to say, as early as possible, while there still is large numbers of this area around this that is not developed, that this is a site that could be an eligible mega site that could change. I would agree with the gentleman that said it could change the landscape. I think it could change the landscape, but in a very positive way, going beyond just the way something looks, but with the way something is used by this parish and by the people of this parish to create new jobs. It's to be able to say, if there's going to be kind of a collaborative light industrial development, here's a place it can go, rather than it kind of spot zoning or hopping around different locations. This could be an ideal place for it to go. Why this amount of land? So that we could have buffers around things that develop. Some of this is wetlands. I'm sorry.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, you're welcome.
Appreciate it. Any other comments from the board or questions? Mr. Porche.
I just wanted to get the staff to further comment, somewhat echoing Mr. McMurray's comments about the process. This would be step one. What other steps besides, the approval, I'm sure traffic, drainage, all that would, I just wanted the staff to comment on the following steps that would have to be taken for permitting of a potential development on this site.
So the steps after the land would get certified, right?
Correct.
Which, getting certified is going to be a year, 2-year long, potentially longer process. Then once that would be done and they would have a prospect come in, they would likely, start whatever federal, state permitting they needed. I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback for some reason. But it's definitely not an easy process to start a light industrial facility from the ground up. A greenfield site like that, they would have to do a full drainage study under our new code the runoff management plan, which would include a lot of fill mitigation, extra elevation requirements on top of what FEMA requires, a lot of study into the impacts, if any, off-site. Traffic impact analysis would have to be done for any facility that has more than 1,000 trips per day, which in a light industrial facility such as this, likely that threshold would catch a lot. So that's months long of study, and then those studies would come up with mitigation needs. For example, if there would need to be a turning lane or a traffic signal or rerouting a drainage lateral. So you've got all the time that it would take to negotiate with all the various entities that would be involved, cost sharing, things like that. Sure. And, you know, at some point after that, we would do the development agreement that would outline all the responsibilities that everybody has. And then they'd likely be able to move forward.
Right. So by no means are we writing a blank check.
Oh, no.
I just wanted that to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, we call for a vote. Ms. Christie, call for roll call vote.
Mr. Smith?
No.
Ms. Cobb?
Yes.
Mr. Porsche?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Navarre?
Yes.
Ms. Dickerson?
No.
Ms. Hyatt?
Yes.
Ms. Galicia?
Yes.
6 for and 2 against.
Motion carries with conditions. Item number 8. We'll take a brief recess right now.
3-minute recess. 3 minutes.
3 minutes?